Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. The Bible is not infallible, and there's a bunch of people lying to you about this irrefutable fact. Consider the difference between the Ten Commandments and the New Testament. The Ten Commandments are more the language of God. Okay, but again, the Sabbath and all these ideas are superimposed on something else. What the Bible is superimposed on, the message that is superimposed on its true universal form, is infallible. Right? The golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And love God with all your heart and all your being. The Bible says that those who are going to confuse you, those who are trying to confuse you, those who are confusing you, they're going to be punished severely. And Paul, as an author, as a character in the story who's said to be an author, is among those people who were confusing you. And it's not because of his stance on women, per se, or this or that. It's because of how he covered up the obvious truth in regards to what is right and what is wrong and what God expects of you. So the Bible says that God is not the author of disorder, but of peace. And the Bible creates tons and tons of disorder. And it does so as what you would expect again. The Bible creates disorder, and it does so as what you would expect it to do. And over the years, as you would expect the government and the liars and the devil would have you, they have tried to refine their techniques of psychology and their sociological techniques in order to confuse you. So God is not the author of disorder, but of peace in the divine order, versus the leader, me, being angry and saying, what are you all doing? And we see that in Proverbs 24:21. Don't rebel against God and I. So for example, in Romans 13, I believe it says that people should do what they shouldn't do, which is to obey the damn, evil, shouldn't obey it no matter what state. Now, why would he allow for that confusion? Okay, one might argue, well, his letters were never meant to be in the Bible. Then why are they there? One way or another, there are people working together to confuse you, and when the Bible was made, there were people working together to confuse you. That is very clear cut. For those of you who are still confused, think about what it means to gather versus to scatter. And a house divided cannot stand, and one who slackens his work is brother to one who destroys. And there's also the parable of the sower. What goes wrong in the parable of the sower? There's the thorns, there's the seed on the path, on rocky ground. It had to do with how the message is being delivered. How the message is being delivered. And who's receiving it. So why does it end up on rocky ground? Why is the ground rocky? And the devil looks at the situation and takes advantage of it. And so it is with the Bible. When the Word was made into Bibles, and there's different Bibles, mind you, with different books. They don't all have the same books across the board. What happened is that every single Bible is wrong. Every single Bible is wrong because of how they explain it. For example, for those who are struggling to understand this because you just don't want to admit that I'm right, imagine if your child was in a house that's on fire and somebody runs up and says, some kind of building, smoke, and you're wondering what they're talking about like everyone else. And they say, well, there's like the kids. Yeah, exactly, the kids. Now, somebody has drugged that person and made it harder for that person to talk. Would you think that that person's explanation is infallible? Wouldn't you want to beat the damn crap out of anyone who would say that it is? You're like, this is far too important for you to pretend that that person's confusing and vague explanation is infallible over this time-sensitive event, an idea, an issue. How much more when all the souls that are at stake and that have been at stake, are at stake and we're at stake. So not only is the Bible not infallible, people should be executed, under a code of law, mind you, for example, for saying so. I'm not saying to go out and kill these people who say it, but I'm saying that what they're doing is so damn pathetic, childish, and evil that is the case. At the same time, people who would use that to try to keep you from being monotheistic and in the Royal African Falcon Martial Order, they also deserve to be executed under the code of law, under a code of a moral and sound law, in an organized and fair and just and right manner. That is how wrong they are about this issue. We see in Galatians 5, there's a lot of confusion. It's very vague. I want you to compare the Galatians 5 explanation to my explanation. I'm going to put it in the description, I'm going to put it in the comments, and I'm going to make another video where I post it there, but I can't guarantee they won't alter it, but it should be very obvious. Just like the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You might say, well, that's not telling me anything, but it is. Because it's telling you that what is right is very obvious. Even in Galatians 5, Paul admits that sin and what is, of the flesh is obviously evil, and it's obvious. So as you consider these things and the purpose of making the parable of the sower, why is it a parable to begin with? Because Christ as a character in the story, as commonly interpreted by people, is the devil. Christ is a character in the story where you understand it's superimposed on the Royal African Falcon top martial artist. And in the end of the story of all time, his soul, basically the soul of Christ in this story is my soul. And my final appearance is the pinnacle of my appearance in reality. For those of you who don't want to accept that, I ask you again, for the umpteenth time, all the churches are tail tucked on this issue, mosques, synagogues, they dare not speak. If the top martial artist of all time is not the Son of God, then who is he? And why is it coded into your language like truths are coded into parables? That martial is marital scrambled. And I, Christ, am the top martial artist ever possible, the bridegroom, Psalm 19, the champion and the bridegroom. And the word Christ has the word hit scrambled into it. And champion has the word ham, like Abraham. Why would that be? Amos 9:7, are you not the same as the Cushites, these certain types of black people with certain types of characteristics unto me, O children of Israel? So as we look at the situation, we should know the difference between true love, true peace, true joy, true forbearance, etc., true gentleness, and the garbage that people are playing out in real life in their fairy churches and their fairy cults and their fairy new age groups with their despicable mentors and secret societies and social clubs. You should know the difference the first time. And you are being judged with the understanding that the vast majority of people should know the difference the first time. With that being said, some people have severe autism. Some people have cerebral palsy past a certain point. Some people have various developmental disorders that prevent them from having a sound understanding, and that is taken into account. But the vast, vast, vast majority of you do not have that problem. And so I'm never being unfair with anybody with retardation or mental disorder or a developmental disorder past a certain point in a way that's clear, not someone who's just lying and wants to do what they want and giggle like worms who think that they can do whatever they want and then just believe. In Galatians 5, he also says, look, he warns them twice. He said, again, I tell you, if you live a life of sexual immorality, you will not enter or inherit the kingdom of heaven. Even Paul, in all of his vagueness, says it again and again. But then in other letters, he confuses it by saying that people are saved by grace in a way that is confusing. There's a reason why the word fairy is like the word Luciferian and Pharisee. If you look at, these mythological creatures, they're fairy tale creatures, vampires, what have you. They're undead, they're satanic, they're demonic, they're based on evil spirits that we see in people. Like Chucky in the Chucky series, for example. Also these characters that they've made up for the movies as well, and in comic books. Animation, anime, from animus, meaning spirit. And you have the word animal, right? You brood of vipers, you wolves, and you should understand that I'm right, and very much so by now. If you don't know that I'm right, then how could you possibly keep the golden rule? If you don't know Christ when he's talking to you in the video and saying pure truth and pointing to ideas that other people shrink from and refuse to admit or they don't know, and saying it with authority as the top martial artist ever with the top martial arts challenge that I've had since 2013, then how can you claim to be smart enough and insightful enough to lead your church or to lead your family or even lead yourself? How could you claim to be wise enough to keep the golden rule and the greatest commandment? You're not. And your negligence, your crimes against God and the righteous, your criminal negligence in that sense, is costing people very dearly, and God commands you to stop pretending that you know what you're doing because you have one teacher, that is me, the Messiah. Thank you.